press the bar. Okay. Members of council, members of SLT, and the assembled residents, it's now 9 a.m. and I call this, I see we have quorum, I call this meeting into session. Regular meeting of Wednesday, May the 17th. As usual, at the beginning of the meeting, we have a land recognition statement, and this week it will be read by Councillor Wink.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We begin this meeting by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe peoples, many of whom continue to live and work here today. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the land protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this gathering place is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples, and acknowledging reminds us that our great standard of living is directly related to the resources and friendship of Indigenous people.
Thank you, Councillor. Now, with the indulgence of the rest of council, we don't have a spot on the agenda for this, but Councillor Kerr and then Councillor Nesnick have some community announcements to make. So, Councillor Kerr, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just a reminder to council and everyone that next weekend is the Fenwick Parade and the Fenwick Lions Carnival. And hopefully everyone will be there. The parade is on the Friday night, and as well, doing a little self-promotion on it. The Maple Acre branch of the library, it has their annual barbecue, and as I've done for the past probably 15 years, I'm the head barbecue person, so if you're looking for hot dogs and pop and stuff, come by the Maple Acre branch.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Kerr. And now to Councillor Nesnick.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Just wanted to let folks know that June is going to be the month celebrating seniors in our community. So between the Recreation Department and town staff and our Pelham Senior Advisory Council, we have lots of fun upcoming events happening. And so stay tuned. We're creating some beautiful posters around town, hoping to institute a coffee hour after some of our fitness classes, just to increase the socialization of our seniors in the area. So stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I take it that these events will also be posted on the town's website?
Yes, our communications department will do an excellent job with that as well.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for those announcements, councillors, and I now turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that the agenda for the May 17th, 2023 regular meeting of council be adopted as circulated.
Any questions on this agenda? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Commencing with the vote with Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Nisnik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion is carried. Moving now to number 4, pecuniary conflict of interest and general nature thereof.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. After viewing the agenda, does any council member have a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So moving now to our delegations. We have a guest today from the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, Kaylee Pyatt, is that correct? The Accounts Manager of Municipal and Stakeholder Relations.
Excellent. Ladies, you have the floor.
Alrighty. So good morning. My name is Kaylee Pyatt, and I'm an account manager with Municipal and Stakeholder Relations at MPAC, taking care of Niagara Region. So I look forward to working with all of you throughout 2023 and beyond. So whether you're newly elected or a seasoned elected official, please know that we're here to help. We have an entire Municipal and Stakeholder Relations team who are ready to answer any questions or provide you with resources that you may need. So at MPAC, we are Ontario's property assessment experts. Our job is to assess and classify more than 5.5 million properties across Ontario with a combined value of over $3 trillion. In the past year, Ontario has grown by approximately 45,000 new residential homes, and in 2022, we added more than $37 billion to Ontario's assessment rolls. Every municipality uses our assessments to make informed decisions about their community, including the distribution of property tax. So we have 4 key players in Ontario's property assessment and taxation system, and they all have a different role to play and interest in this process. The provincial government, specifically the Minister of Finance, is responsible for setting assessment legislation and policies, and they also determine the education tax rate. There is an independent body known as the Assessment Review Board, which will review appeals of MPAC assessments, and this also falls under jurisdiction of the province. MPAC is an independent, not-for-profit corporation which is funded by all Ontario municipalities. Our role is to accurately assess and classify all properties in Ontario, and we do this in compliance with the Assessment Act and any regulations which are set by the Government of Ontario. Now, we're accountable to the province, municipalities, and property ratepayers through a board of directors, which is comprised of municipal, provincial, and taxpayer representatives, all of whom are appointed by the Minister of Finance. So municipalities, you're going to determine your budgets, set tax rates, and collect property taxes to pay for municipal services such as police, fire, roads, recreation, and water, among many more. And then finally, there are property owners who pay the property tax bill and help to set market value through ongoing property purchases and sales. As you can imagine, maintaining Ontario's property database is very important. Property data is continuously updated so that when our stakeholders are making important decisions, our records are completely up to date for you. Maintaining Ontario's property database includes inspecting and assessing new construction, additions, and renovations promptly, responding to property owner inquiries, and helping them to understand their assessments. We support municipalities by offering Municipal Connect, which is where our municipal stakeholders can obtain the primary source of assessment-related data and information. We work collaboratively on projects that are important to you, like digital e-permitting. We also have statutory duties, such as responding to requests for reconsiderations and maintaining people data by tracking the school support for over 5.5 million properties. Monitoring the market and assessing newly built and renovated properties are some of the things that we do every day to keep our property data current. We also will periodically update every single property in the province of Ontario based on the same legislated valuation date. This is called an assessment update or a reassessment. The valuation date for the most recent reassessment, which took effect in 2017, is January 1, 2016. This is when we determined what every single property in Ontario could have reasonably sold for as of a particular point in time. It is provincial legislation which will determine when MPAC conducts each province-wide assessment update and will set the valuation date for that cycle. Now, there was a reassessment that was scheduled to occur in 2020, but this was postponed by the province to provide stability and certainty to Ontarians and to allow municipalities to focus on responding to the challenges which were posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, property assessments continue to be based on the legislated valuation date of January 1, 2016. Although the assessment update remains paused, our work continues to keep property data up to date. Property owners will still receive a property assessment notice from MPAC for any changes that have taken place to their property. This past November, MPAC sent out approximately 800,000 notices to reflect these changes. Now, once the province announces when the next assessment update will take place and what the valuation date will be, we're going to let you know, and we will work with you to have meaningful conversations while we finalize the values in your community. So let's talk briefly about valuation. In Ontario, we have 3 standardized approaches to value. So it's the cost approach, income approach, and direct comparison approach. For today, I'm going to focus on the direct comparison approach, as it's mainly used for residential, condo, and vacant land properties. Now, should you wish to learn more about the other approaches or have a more in-depth conversation about assessment, I'm available to attend a training session with you or individually should you have any questions. Now, with the direct comparison approach, we analyze recent sales of comparable properties which were sold for a similar or identical use as the property in which we're looking to value. This will provide us with an indication of value, but it's also important that only open market, valid transactions are utilized in this approach. Now, when we're looking at the valuation of a residential home, although our analysis tool is going to consider over 200 different factors, the 5 you see before you are going to make up approximately 85% of a typical residential home. So this is location, lot dimension, exterior square footage, quality of construction, and age of the property, but age will be adjusted for any major renovations or additions that have taken place to the home. Now, you might ask what draws our attention to a property, and it's typically one of the following things: a market sale, request from a municipality or property owner, building permit activity, or the filing of a request for reconsideration or appeal. MPAC's role is to take building permits and plans and turn them into assessment. Our municipal stakeholders rely on MPAC assessments to levy property tax. The sooner MPAC can deliver assessment, the sooner our municipal stakeholders can realize new revenue. Every year, MPAC processes, on average, around 300,000 building permits for new development or renovation. Now, sometimes a property owner is not going to agree with their assessed value. A property owner may connect with you to let you know that they disagree with their assessed value, but it is important to remember that assessments are not taxation. Property owners should ask themselves, could I have sold my property on January 1st, 2016 for its current assessed value? They should visit aboutmyproperty.ca to ensure that the information MPAC has on file for their property is accurate. While on aboutmyproperty.ca, an owner can complete some comparable research of similar homes in their areas. Now, if a property owner still disagrees with their assessed value, they can file a request for reconsideration and we will review their property free of charge. There's also the option to file with the Assessment Review Board, which would be an appeal. So let's spend a moment to address the relationship between property taxes and assessment. Assessments distribute taxes. They do not determine the taxes to be paid. When a province-wide assessment update occurs, the most important factor is not how much the assessed value of a property has changed, but rather how the assessed value has changed relative to the change in that class within their community. In anticipation of the next province-wide reassessment, we've implemented a strategy to address the misconceptions about the relationship between assessment and taxes. This includes resources for municipalities that will ensure when an announcement is made that we are here with the supports you need. So this digital toolkit is available on mpac.ca, and it will help municipalities, including elected officials, to mitigate the misinformation and provide support and resources to educate and inform property owners. In the digital toolkit, you're going to find a video how your property taxes are calculated based on the assessed value of your home. I've linked this video in the presentation on the next page. We won't have time today to watch it, but I strongly encourage that you take the 3 minutes or so to review it. It's also on our YouTube page, so it's easy to send out to anyone that may be interested. So with that, I want to thank you again for having me here this morning, and we definitely want to stay connected. So if not already, please be sure that you subscribe to In Touch. This is our monthly municipal e-newsletter. It can be done through mpac.ca. You can send me an email, and I'm happy to sign you up. But please be sure to reach out at any time should you have questions or be looking for any resources.
Excellent. Thank you for your presentation. At this point, I'll turn to council. Any councillor have questions? And I see Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Always interesting to hear from MPAC. MPAC assessments seem to be slower as a result of COVID. How much delay in assessment is being experienced for new builds at this time?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to clarify, when you're saying there's a delay in our assessments, are you referring to a reassessment of the province or the completion of building permit activity in your municipality?
The latter.
Okay. Thank you for that. So I wouldn't say that there's a delay in the process of our building permit activity. Our service level agreement that we have with the municipality is to complete 85% of all new construction within the first year of occupancy, and we have met that service level. There was delay through COVID in terms of the completion time for permits, so something that maybe historically would take 6 months, we're taking closer to a year due to supply shortages and labor or the closing of different areas. But from MPAC's standpoint, we are right in line with completing permit work as scheduled.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the presentation, Ms. Pyatt. I was wondering, you said in one of the charts that you do new assessment forecasting. How far out is that? Is it like a 5-year forecast or a 10-year forecast, or and what is it based on? Is it based on the growth plans that are being given to us by the region and the province?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So we actually provide 5 different forecasts for the municipality. So the first one comes out in October, and this is a preliminary forecast of what we are anticipating for the next year. That forecast is going to be missing M plans and condo plans because they're generally not registered at that time. At the end of January, we release another forecast, which is going to include the M plan and condos. So if any changes have been made, it's going to be a little more accurate at that time at the end of January. Then we are going to also provide a quarterly forecasts for the municipalities. So 30 days at the end of each quarter, we release a forecast. So any adjustments that need to be made, either there's new construction that wasn't previously considered, or if we find out that a condo or different construction isn't going to be completed, we do update these forecasts to keep the municipality as up to date as possible. And now these forecasts are going to be based on historical data from your municipality. So what have we traditionally seen over the past 2 or 3 years? And then we also take into consideration the active building permits that we have in our system to create these estimates as well.
Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A further question. The question I usually get is the use of the neighbor's property has changed, and how do I get the valuation on my property changed? And I didn't see that on one of the things on the list unless it's under reassessment.
Certainly. So through you, Mr. Mayor, if someone is looking at their property and they believe that their current value assessment is too high, they would need to file a request for reconsideration with MPAC. If they believe that any information is wrong, that is their course of action to file with us to get us to come out to speak with them and update that property. Like I said, the other triggers that are going to bring us out if a property has changed is largely going to be for building permit activity or a recent sale. We do go out to analyze all of those as well.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions? If I may, I would like to one. How this that you just mentioned, Councillor Olson, if someone did ask for reevaluation or reassessment, is any idea what the waiting time would be from the time they sent out their application for a reassessment until they got reassessed?
Certainly. So there's 180 days is the legislated time frame there. So we work on them as actively and quickly as possible. And some of that's going to depend. If when a reassessment is announced and that happens, we're likely to see a larger influx of requests for reconsiderations and appeals. So your timeline is going to be a little bit longer. But we do work to do it within that time frame, and we will communicate with the property owners as soon as they come in. Within that kind of first 30 days, we hope to get that communication out. But if someone were to file a request for reconsideration and 60, 90 days have gone by and they haven't heard anything, they can contact us as well to ensure that the file did come through, or in case anything happened that way, and then we can look into it as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Again, one last time, any other further comments or questions? I see none. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Eckhart and seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive the presentation from Kaylee Pyatt, providing an overview of the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation for information.
Thank you. Again, any comments from Council? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk.
Commencing with the vote, Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr. Yes. Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Again, thank you for taking the time to come out. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, we have Mr. Steve Langlois, Principal Planner with Monteith Brown Planning Consultants, back to give us one more update on our Recreation Master Plan.
Excellent. Steve, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Good morning. It is my pleasure to be here again this morning. On behalf of our consulting team, we're pleased to be presenting the final Recreation, Culture, and Parks Master Plan for the town of Pelham. And I want to thank you for your comments at our previous council meeting. We certainly tried our best to integrate those into the document that's before you today. So as a refresher, The town's Recreation, Culture, and Parks Master Plan will guide the provision of leisure, recreation, culture services, programs, facilities, services, parks, amenities for the next 10 years. The draft plan in draft form was presented to council at their April 19th meeting, including an overview of high priority recommendations, then released for public feedback. This is an exciting moment in the sense that we now have a strategy in place to continue to build an excellent parks, recreation, and cultural system. We heard many very complimentary comments from your public on the amenities, the spaces, the services, the staff. So I think everyone to almost a person that was engaged in our process is very much looking forward to maintaining and those levels of service and building for the future. Now, the plan's development and implementation was and will be guided by an overall vision supported by 5 goals. All recommendations do seek to instill an overall vision of facilitating fun, connecting the community, and enabling participation by all. And this will be achieved by, we have 5 goals on the screen there that help to really give you that long-term currency in planning as you move forward with implementation. As a reminder as well, and I'll update you, the phase 2 consultation in a moment here. Our first phase of consultation was information gathering. This occurred last year, summer into fall, and included the establishment of a distinct public project website, a community survey with over 400 responses. That is, most folks were filling that out on behalf of their household, so that would be over 1,000 residents within your community that completed that provided input into that method. We had pop-up consultations with over 220 engaged participants. We had a virtual open house for those that couldn't meet us in person, as well as consultation with area stakeholders. So overall, the plan is built on a very solid foundation led by public and stakeholder input. We engaged nearly 700 community members through the process. Most recently, phase 2, when we had the draft plan in place, that was put out more broadly for public review, and a call for comments was widely circulated through the town's various media channels, emails, posters. You probably saw them in the Meridian Center, for example, newspaper, social media, and more. So those, in total through that process, we received about 20 different comments on the draft plan. All of those suggestions have been integrated into the plan as appropriate in order to strengthen it as a foundational document for the community. Some of the key areas that we heard public comment on, good support for the existing trails network, suggestions for additional improvements for walking and cycling were offered, consideration of an art gallery and cultural center, and I believe you have a motion on your agenda today speaking to that particular item. We heard a few comments around park-specific improvements, including consideration of any impacts of any potential future grading changes at Harold Black Park, and support for renovating your outdoor pool. So just for my last slide, a reminder, we presented this last time around, but the plan itself contains still 59 recommendations. We did make a few adjustments to them, but the section 9.4, if you want the longer read, that's where you'll find all of those recommendations. Priority and timing are provided for each. Most of these do not require capital funding. We expect anything that does would come back to council through either the budget process or through the normal channels for additional approval on an as-needed basis. So that is my presentation today. I'd be pleased to take any questions or comments that you do have.
Excellent. Thank you for that presentation, Steve. I'll turn to council. I see Councilor Olson. Is that your hand, I see? Yes?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Steve. I'm a great believer in planning, and in fact, I think that if you look at the difference between unplanned work and planned work, 40%, unplanned work is cheaper by 40% than unplanned work. That's a published number, but the strategy that we have here is a good one, and it works through people. And the real creative force behind this is our staff, who've done terrific job, and I believe your last comments were how well the staff does and how perhaps limited the resources are, but the creative force behind this is our staff, and led by Vicki, and I think they've done a terrific job here. It's been a real eye-opener to talk to people when they go to the parks and then they come here and they see what we have here and what this building is developed into and what the parks have developed into. And we've got a little bit of work to do on some of them. And I'm looking forward to seeing us do this because I think this plan can be the leadership document that we need to make sure that we get the right priorities and make sure that we cover all of the different sites. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments on the presentation? Councillor Eckert.
Just one question for you. Going back to the information gathering session and, 414 unique responses, et cetera, the number of people. Is this a common number of people? Is it a good representation of the community? And, or was this low, or is it, about average?
Thank you for your question through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the survey, we hit the target we established. We were hoping to get around 300 or 400. We got just a little bit more than that. And we're thankful for the promotion that your Recreation and Culture Department assisted with that. We also wanted to cast a broad net. As you saw, there was a number of different ways that we tried to solicit input from the public. So it's not just a matter of them filling out a survey. We wanted to go to them. So we were out at your concerts in the park and farmers market, at here in the Meridian Center when the programs were running. So we would give them an opportunity as well. So we're pleased with the number of responses that we received.
So to summarize then, our staff did a great job, and it shows that the people in the community are extremely interested in this project. Would you agree?
Yes to both of those.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? Not seeing any. I have one to the CEO, if I may. Of the 59 recommendations, will that be, how do they pick the order of implementation of those? So maybe either CEO or to Mr. Maybe, but I'll go to the top here. How will we decide which ones get implemented first and what have you?
Well, Mr. Mayor, you're the top. That's definitely not me. And Ms. Van Ravensway is certainly. So at best, I'm going to take the third seat, just for the record. But look, the 59 recommendations span from programming to there are a whole bunch of different, conceptually different things, right? There's some about staffing. There's some about the nature of programming. There's some about programming for different demographics. There's some in there about facility, like it spans the gamut. It really is very comprehensive. Yep. So part of the answer is that you can work on a number of things simultaneously, of course, because staffing will assist with some things, but it doesn't address facility concerns, et cetera, and vice versa. We now have the document by motion later this morning. I think you're going to accept it and approve it. And so it'll become formal later this morning, one anticipates. At that point in time, it's really incumbent on the management team. We have excellent guidance on how we can do and be better and grow with our community. So that really becomes a management tool now for us to come back to you. I can tell you that I've had 2 meetings of significance with Ms. Van Ravensway and her team in the last 3 weeks, working with what at the moment is still actually draft until you endorse. But we see a lot of merit in a lot of the suggestions. And so we're already having conversations about how do we do that. You will quite likely have a substantive report to this body. We're targeting late June, It may come in July. But it'll be in there somewhere. And so that'll be the first sort of our thoughts on how to go forward. And that's a month away, give or take a little bit. And ultimately, of course, council has the capacity to direct us on how, what, where, and when. And then fundamentally, I think you'll probably end up seeing some items in proposed future budgets. And this becomes the reference document for why we're suggesting proposition A, B, or C, as the case may be. And of course, council will then consider financially in addition to guidance and telling us where to put the emphasis. So it's a collection of pieces. We really needed the external expertise that has been delivered quite well, and it really did a good job of engaging the community. So we have high confidence that this is in fact what the community wants and needs because of good consultation with professional recommendations that are actionable. The content in there about park size and park availability and parkland, for instance, that's something we're working on our official plan. Well, that's going to feed into that, right? So in fact, we react to it in different ways across the corporation. And of course, you'll react to it, but you get 3 more budgets this term. So the council also has that capacity and control. In the short term, I think the answer is you're going to get a significant report in, I'll call it a month, but it may be 6 weeks, in that sort of time frame. And that will only, of course, address, and it's not going to address all 59 things. It's going to be, here's some stuff we think we can do now, and we'll be looking for your blessing / guidance.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mr. Zio. So we will look forward to a great program becoming even better in the future. Again, Stephen, thank you for your presentation. One last time, any further comments from council? Not seeing any, sir. Thank you. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be it resolved that council receive the presentation from Steve Langlois, Principal Planner at Monteith Brown Planning Consultants regarding the Town of Pelham Recreational Master Plan for information.
Any further debate? Not seeing any.
Starting the vote with Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand, and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. Thank you. Moving now to item 6 on your agenda, the adoption of council meetings. I have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr and seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. C-09, 2023, regular council, May 3rd, 2023.
Thank you. Council, after reading and looking at these minutes, is there any comments, any omissions or additions to be required? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Thank you. Starting the vote with Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand, Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Thank you. Moving to item number 7, request to lift consent agenda items for separate consideration, and I have been advised that we have at least 3 for consideration, so I'll turn it to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. Before I turn to the rest of council, I would like to lift 8.1.1, please. And I will now turn to council. Any other items? Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to be lifting item 8.2.2.
Thank you. Any other ones? Councillor Olson.
Mayor, 8.1.2.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillors wish to lift? Not seeing any. Mr. Clerk.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, so we still have a few items on the consent agenda. We can deal with those now under number 8 as a block if you like.
Yes. Obviously, minus the 8.2.
Obviously, the
Yes.
4 that have been identified.
Okay. Any comments on those agenda items? Councilor Niznik?
Well, just 8.3.1, which is in regards to Bill 5.
Yes.
Just hoping that council will support the letter that's written there with regards to sending a letter to the ministry with regards to supporting elected officials and giving, changing the bylaw or the law so that elected officials have some recourse should they experience abuse or harassment to a significant degree.
Excellent. Thank you, Councilor Nesnick. To the clerk on that item.
Yes, so thank you. If Councillor Niznik would like, we can lift that one as well and deal with it separately by resolution. So thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you.
Any other ones in that group? Not seeing any, Mr. Clark?
Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Hildebrand and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items listed on the May 17th, 2023 council agenda be received and the recommendations contained therein be approved, save and accept items 8.1.1, 8.1.2, 8.2.2, and 8.3.1.
Thank you. Any further
Mr. Mayor, could I add,
I'm sorry,
could
go
I add
ahead, Councilor Olson.
8.3.2?
I'm sorry,
Could
Councilor?
I add 8.3.2 as well?
Like 8.3.2?
That's right.
Okay, 8.3.2. Thank you, Councilor. Now, on the remaining items, none, Mr. Clerk?
Okay, commencing with the vote then, Mr. Mayor, starting with Councillor Olson,
Yes?
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Okay, so those are carried. We'll now move to item 9. The consent agenda items lifted, so I would suggest that we just go in order of the ones that have been identified. So 8.1.1, municipal drain process.
Thank you. I realize this report came to council for information. I thought the report itself was mostly was well written. I do have there's a part of it that I think council has to discuss at a greater extent, and I'll read the part that that I think is going to mean something in the future, if not now. So quoting from the report, at present, Far and River roads do not appear to have drainage issues, and Public Works staff have indicated that historically, the municipal roadways have not experienced drainage issues in this area. So we have, in the last 2 months at least, we had a report come to this council that council requested, a cost of $50,000. And this report has indeed indicated that the historical flow of the water has been changed. It has historically flowed east to west, and the report we had given to us has stated that it now is flowing eastward. Unfortunately, this problem came to light, I believe it was about 2 years ago, and a landowner had had built a berm, a dam, let's call it a dam, and had prevented the water from flowing onto his property, and the town at that time had to request the landowner to remove the drainage or the dam to prevent the road from flooding. The landowner, luckily, thankfully, graciously, removed the dam, and the road did indeed not flood. Now, unfortunately, in the meantime, since that berm was taken down, the landowner has has his own study done, and the town had our study done, and then they both concur. I guess we have to go with the one we put forward. The study we had done for us realizes that the flow of water is now going from west to east. And I can honestly say that staff realizes, and I've driven by this area, and the dam is now back in place, which means that sooner or later, and it's going to be sooner, whether we get 3 inches of rain during a thunderstorm this summer or spring runoff in the spring, that road is now going to flood unless something is done in the if not immediate future, in the very near future. So I don't think this question can be asked in open session, but I would like to ask staff or the CAO the legal ramifications, as I'm sure there's going to be, when the road floods. What are our options?
Well, that's an excellent question. We can provide you with answers, and if you'd like to go in camera for some legal advice on that, we can offer that to you. And if you'd prefer not to, we can also answer the question.
Thank you. I would. I actually believe that we have the grounds and the necessity of going in camera. I'll turn to the clerk for his advice.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So if you are looking for legal advice on what the town's liability might be should events transpire that would flood that road, I think it would meet the qualifications under Section 239 legal advice, and we could entertain a motion right now to defer this discussion to our in-camera session pursuant to that relevant section.
Okay, thank you. Is there a councillor that would put this motion forward? Thank you, Councillor Olson. I need a seconder.
Yes.
And we need a seconder, Councillor Hildebrand. Thank you.
Yeah,
Any further debate on this motion before council? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Yeah, just so that, Mr. Mayor, that council is aware of what we're proposing. The motion I have before council now is moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand, that the council would like to get legal advice on the liability for the town in regards to the drainage issue in the Far and River Roads area, and then we would move this discussion to the closed session later in the agenda.
Great, thank you. On this motion, any further discussion? Not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
So commencing the vote, Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Kerr?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart?
Yes.
Councillor Niznik?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
So that motion's carried. We'll deal with that in closed session.
Okay, thank you.
Moving to the next item that was lifted for discussion was 8.1.2, the Town Hall building additions, and Councillor Olson asked for that to be lifted.
Okay, Councillor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And my question is to, I guess it's to Ms. Van Wavensway or Mr. Marr. We now have a more expansive grass area out in front of the town hall there, which should be quite an attractive venue for a number of things. But we lost the crossover there. Have you been able to accommodate that, you know, the one-way section there?
To Ms. Van Ravensway?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't quite understand the question, but if you're talking about the drive around, are we able to accommodate because of that change?
Well, we're not going to have a drive around now, so what are we going to do with the piece of grass that we got there now?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, it's going to make a larger area for our patrons that when they come out to our events. You know, we've visited the site many times because we're preparing for our opening of the Summer Chill Series in the supper market. And we're able to accommodate the vendors as we did in the past, just in a different way. And the area the additional grassed area behind the addition will accommodate additional seating area, where in the past it was asphalt. So I think that you will find the park area to be more accommodating than what it has in the past, and also accessible.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Van Ravensway. Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe it's much more attractive the way it is, and if we put trees in there, is there any plans for trees or anything there for the front of the building? Not that it's necessary to have them, but.
Ms. Van Ravensway, to the Director of Public Works, Jason Marr.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, we don't have a landscaping plan per se. Part of the contract is for the contractor to grade the area that was disturbed, put down topsoil and sod. We will be looking at future opportunities with respect to plantings as well. Our beautification department is working on a restoration plan for the flowering beds adjacent to Town Hall around the new addition. So that will be taking place this spring. And then opportunities in the future for sure for additional trees.
Thank you, Director. Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And finally, when is the building going to open? When is the grand opening?
To the
Have you
CAO.
defined that?
Now, that is $1 million question and is a target date we have moved twice. But at the moment, the lead candidate is for the 22nd of June. The theory being that by then, hopefully, most of the sod will have taken, so that if we do have a large number of humans, hopefully it will survive that. And secondly, that's a very significant night. It's the start of the concert series. We also, well, I guess I'm the one doing the unveil. It looks highly likely that we're going to be able to have an Indigenous market to go along with, which coming in from out of town, of course, but to go along with the farmers market simultaneously. So we're hoping to have sort of quite a good party in Pelham with a grand opening, 2 markets, the food trucks, and ultimately music. So we have June 22nd targeted, and at the moment it looks like that is realistic. So with any luck, we'll do a proper rollout announcement, but that is the plan as we speak.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and everybody.
Okay, thank you. Oh, Councillor Nesnick.
Yes, just on that topic, in the report, it discusses the alternative or suggestion that they add a 3rd clock onto the clock tower, 4th clock, so the north, east, and south have clocks right now, and it's just the west clock or west side does not have a clock. So I guess, to add a clock onto there for $20,000, to me that seems excessive. So just wondering if we can have a conversation about that, or what the will of the rest of the group is thinking as well in terms of that. I think a beautiful logo. I'm not sure if we got the cost of what the logo would be for that side of the tower. You were hoping to have that available for this meeting, so I'm just wondering if that's available through you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you for that question, Councillor Nesnick, and I believe the Director of Public Works, Mr. Marr.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. We have done some research and investigation into the cost for supplying and installing a logo, which would be the same size as one of the clock faces. There's different options. You can do acrylic or aluminum. The approximate cost for supplying installation of that would be about $7,500 plus tax. So that's not through our contractor. That's going directly to a signed company. We received some estimates from that company, and that's what they're coming back with.
Okay, thank you. Councillor?
Yikes. Okay, thank you. So just wondering what our other councillors are feeling about adding the clock there, or?
Okay, I'll put the question out there. Any other comments? I see Councillor Wink.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. There was comment with CAO. We're not aware of any clocks out there having 3 sides, and lo and behold, a couple of weeks ago, I drove down Thorold Stone Road in Dorchester, and yes, in fact, there is a clock tower with only 3 sides on it. So I don't think adding a 4th clock is necessary. We're experiencing cost overruns on this project already. We do have a digital clock on that side of the building through our sign, and there is also a clock on the corner of Town Square and Pelham. So to add more clocks, and in all honesty, we all walk around with our phones, and if we want to see our time, we whip out our phone, and there it is. So to spend another $20,000, I do not concur with that. And in fact, even the logo, the comment in the report was said that the visibility on certain directions is obstructed. If we can't see it from all directions, why spend $7,000 on it? So those are my thoughts.
So then, so just to be clear then, Councillor, you're all for leaving the area blank?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with Councillor Wink's comments. I am frugal and will not spend money on a clock or a logo. Thank you.
Short and sweet. Thank you, sir. Councillor Kerr?
I agree with Councillor Wink in terms of the finances. The comment he made about there's already a digital clock that people can see quite easily, and the clock at the entrance to Town Square and a few other things. And I can understand the cost of a logo. One thing that I guess I've always remembered, and not to say that it would happen, is that inevitably municipalities have a tendency to rebrand, which generally means a logo's changed. So you're almost looking at potentially, and I'm not saying it would happen, but potentially suddenly have, oh, well, we've got to take it down. We've spent this money, now we've got to spend it again on something else just to change the look. So I would kind of follow Councillor Hildebrand and Councillor Wink in saying that leaving it blank and maybe something more appropriate in the future we can decide upon, but at this time I would suggest no clock.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Kerr. Councillor Eckert?
Originally, when this was floated to us, I believe by the CEO, I was in favor of something being there. I didn't know what it could be. Now that we have looked at the options and from the comments of my fellow councillors, I am reluctant to spend that amount of money. When it's pointed out the number of clocks that are in that area, we don't want to be known as the clock town. But yeah, if we could have done it for a little bit less or quite a bit less, I would say, I might be in support of it, but for that cost, I would not be in favor of it.
Yeah, and so you're also for leaving it blank then, sir?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olson, any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I agreed. I can't see a real benefit for this, so why go to the expense? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we have council's initiative or desires on this to leave the area blank, possibly put a picture of the mayor. I don't know, I'm just saying. Anyway, to you, Mr. Clerk.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is that we just need a resolution now to receive the report. There was no recommendation to actually expend funds. There was 3 options were presented to council. None of them have been selected other than the status quo. So I need a mover or a seconder to receive it for information.
Okay, do we have a mover and a seconder? Mover will be Councillor Eckert, and seconder will be Councillor Nesnick.
Okay, proceeding with the vote then. Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrandt,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion was approved. Now moving to the next item that was lifted, that is the call for nominations, Niagara Regional Committees, and I believe that was Councillor Hildebrandt that asked for that.
Okay, Councillor Hildebrandt?
Through you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've prepared the following resolution. Be it resolved that the council receive the call for nominations to the committees for the Niagara region, and that the council for the town of Pelham hereby support Councillor Hildebrandt's nomination to serve on the Landfill Road 12 Committee.
Okay, and I believe you held this position during the last council.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. To the clerk?
Seconder.
Oh, we need a seconder. Councillor Olson? And would you like to talk on this motion, Councillor Hildebrandt?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's the only engineered landfill site in the region, and I also don't know of any other engineered landfill site in Ontario. It's a provincially mandated legislated committee. It serves 4 communities. It serves Grimsby, West Lincoln, Lincoln, and Pelham. That's our landfill site. The representatives from the community are very interested in environmental people. It's a great site to be on. It's when I look at this site and go to this site, it's the only landfill site where you can drive to and you don't smell it before you get there, or you don't see any fences around it collecting garbage that's flowing out of the landfill site. And that's because it's a properly engineered site. The way it's designed, for the rest of council who have never been there, it's essentially in pods, and the pod is created by a clay liner. And the clay liner, like your basement, has the big O surrounding it that goes to a pumping station that pumps it out, and the effluent that goes down through the site is sent to the sewage treatment plant. Therefore, that smell is greatly reduced. The other thing that's different about the site is every time the large trucks go in there, which is typical of landfill sites, the big trucks dump. But if the area isn't covered by the end of the day, what happens is the site is covered by a big tarp that's pulled over by a big caterpillar. So every layer of garbage that's put down is covered by wood chips. And that continues on till the pod is complete. So it's a very clean site. There's no wildlife around the site. Most landfill sites you go to, like Walker's or Humberstone, those things, you know where the landfill site is because you see all the seagulls flying above it. We have a resident falconer and his falcon that live there, and essentially that takes care of all the wildlife naturally. So therefore, it's a very, very clean. I believe the diversion policy at this site that is encouraged by the committee members is far greater than any other landfill sites. I've tried to get the region to publish data on this site as compared to other sites. They have the data, but that is never available. And therefore, it's a committee that I think is essential. And I think the policies that we adopt there, especially with the changes in the Blue Box program coming forward, I think it's essential that we have strong representation at that site. And I'd prefer my name to stand. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. And I always thought you held that position when I was on council when I first started, and that always was very impressive that due to the recycling commitment of the residents, that landfill site, and correct me if I'm wrong, sir, I believe it started out with a life expectancy of 40 years, and because of recycling, I believe after 20 years, it's still 25 or 40 years left to go. Any comments on that?
That is absolutely correct. the expected life expectancy of this landfill site has never diminished because of the recycling policies that we've established. It's so interesting that one of the things that even amazed me when I first got on the committee is we even recycle anything that comes in that represents a bicycle part, gets sent to Port Colborne High School, and they have a bicycle program there, and they assemble bicycles for third world countries. So once you get a container full of bicycles, they're sent to third world countries. The other thing that happens is if you go to the Humberson site or the Walker site, there may be the goodwill people off to the side, but it's not in the site. In this site right now, we have the Salvation Army. So you drive through the grates and we have the Salvation Army. And anything that's potentially recyclable or reusable, they're there to collect it before it even gets into the site and goes over the scale. And so the recyclability of the site is amazing. In the last term, we've had to install security cameras because we actually have thieves coming in there because of the stuff we have in the recycling piles, and they can make money by collecting our recyclables. Because we actually recycle bottles that people would normally just throw away instead of bringing back to the LCBO or the beer store. All those are segregated. So we segregate all those as well and have a very effective program. The manager there is from the region, and we have one director and a clerk representative from the region that's part of this site. Other than that, it's all, the 4 communities have a counselor, and then the residents can apply and become part of this committee. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson, you seconded the motion. Any comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. I was pleased to second the motion. I would have been just as happy to make the motion that Councillor Hildebrand represent us on that on the landfill, because he has the experience, and it presents the continuity, and he has the expertise to make sure that this works. So this is important, and I think he's the person to do this.
Okay. Thank you very much for those comments, Councillor. Any other comments or questions on the motion before us? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we do have that motion on the floor before us, and I'll start the vote with Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
And Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. Next item that we asked, or that we were asked to lift, was item 8.3.1, the Township of Perry Resolution Bill 5. That was requested by Councillor Niznik.
Okay. Councillor Nesnick.
Yes, so thank you very much. So basically, the overview, Bill 5, is the Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, so they would change that. Currently, municipally elected leaders do not have an appropriate accountability structure when it comes to perpetrating violence and harassment in the workplace. So if a claim is egregious, the most severe harassment is substantiated. The maximum penalty that can be imposed is 3 months without pay, but the counselor can retain their position, return to the workplace, and seek re-election. So this differs from any other workplace in the province, where not only are workplaces mandated to have violence and harassment in the workplace policies, but these policies outline consequences for violation, which includes termination. So what this bill will do is require counselors to comply with the workplace violence and harassment policies of the municipality they represent, permit municipalities to direct the Integrity Commissioner to apply to the court to vacate a member's seat for failing to comply with the municipality's workplace violence and harassment policy, and thirdly, restrict counselors whose seat has been vacated from seeking immediate subsequent re-election. So I'm just hoping that our council will support this. Several other communities have, 67 other municipalities have formally endorsed this, and this is coming before the legislature on May 31st.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. I turn to the clerk. What's the procedure?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm assuming Councillor Niznik will want to make this motion, and we will need a seconder then.
Okay. Councillor Nesnick, your motion. And Councillor Olson, your second? Okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Mayor, I will read the resolution. It's a little lengthy. We need to work on that a little bit, but we have a motion moved by Councillor Nisnik and seconded by Councillor Olson. Be resolved that the council receive the correspondence from the Township of Perry regarding Bill 5 for information, and that the agenda be amended to add, whereas the municipality elected leaders do not have an appropriate accountability structure when it comes to perpetrating violence and harassment in the workplace, and whereas a fundamental underlying principle of broadening diversity, equality, and inclusion in politics rests on the assumption that the workplace is safe, and whereas Bill 5, the Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, would require members of council to comply with the workplace violence and harassment policies of the municipalities they represent, permit municipalities to direct the Integrity Commissioner to apply to the court to vacate a member's seat for failing to comply with the municipality's violence and harassment policies, as well as to restrict officials whose seat has been vacated from seeking immediate subsequent re-election. And whereas over 67 municipalities have formally endorsed and communicated public support for Bill 5, and whereas Bill 5 would both hold accountable and protect all municipal officials, now therefore be it resolved that the Town of Pelham Council expresses support for Bill 5, Stopping Harassment and Abuse by Local Leaders Act, and that the resolution be circulated to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, Sam Oosterdorff, MPP, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olson, Councillor Nesnick, any further comments on your motion?
No, thank you. That was very clear.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olson,
Yes.
seconder.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look at this, I'm fully in support of this, but I kind of look at it as if I shouldn't even have a vote in this, really, because I'm very unlikely to be the victim of harassment myself. I have all the preferences. I have the white, male, Northern European, Northern Hemisphere, housed, educated. I've got a car. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't have these things, and I think sometimes those people are victims of all kinds of things, and I would vote for this, but with full support, but also recognizing that we've got to be very vigilant of these things, and that's what I'm hoping this motion works towards in the legislature of Ontario. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And not wanting to make light of the bill, you did forget your good looks.
Scandinavian good looks.
Yeah, indeed. Is there any other member of council that would like to comment at this time on this motion? Not seeing any, I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commencing the vote with Councillor Nisnik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes?
Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. Thank you. Moving now to 8.3.2, the Town of Pelham Compliance Emergency Management Ontario. And I believe it was Councillor Olson that asked for that to be.
Okay, Councillor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just looking at this report and going back in my mind over the last 3 or 4 years, and we had an emergency here, the COVID emergency, followed by all the things that went along with that. And this certificate is a confirmation that our emergency services worked very well through that. We all knew that, I think. And it also shows that the benefit of preparation, and you can see in here the organizations that didn't take seriously the training and the exercises and that type of thing. It's kind of remarkable how you prepare for events like this, and the quality of the training and the exercises has to be at a high level in order to make them worthwhile and not just a waste of time. So I just wanted to make that mention to the chief and say thank you to the chief and the fire department again for their work, because this had the potential of being a terrible disaster for a lot of communities, and most people manage to avoid it. So the preparation and preparedness has been has really stood us in good stead and saved probably a lot of heartache. So that's my comment, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wilson. I'll turn to the fire chief. Any comments on this item? Oh, I'm sorry, you don't have a mic. Okay. Oh, excellent. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks, Councillor, for the nice comments. It's actually not the fire department that does the emergency management part. We have a committee. We have a working group and a committee comprised of Ms. Weens, Ryan Cook, Leah Lutford, and our leader, fearless leader, Mr. Cribbs. So it's and all the other senior management in this table, we all participate in these annual compliance check boxes, whatever you want to call them, and training and education and so forth. So it's a combination of a lot of people, and that's why we're successful. So thanks for the comments, and thank everybody at this table for their input.
Okay, thank you for a little bit of clarification there, Chief. Thank you. Any other comments?
Yes, I just, Mr. Mayor, just wonder which fearless leader. There's lots of fearless leaders, so, sorry.
Okay, any other comments? Not seeing any. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that Council received the correspondence from the Emergency Management Ontario regarding the Town of Pelham's emergency management compliance with the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act for information.
Okay, any further comments, questions? Not seeing any?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Commencing the vote, Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes?
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion is carried. Thank you. So I believe that finishes the items that were lifted from the consent agenda. So we'll move now to staff reports, number 10. And our first staff report is becoming a living wage employer. It's under the Chief Administrative Officers, but I believe we have a guest presentator here to speak to that as well. So we have a motion moved by Councillor Kerr, seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved, the Council receive report 2023-0047, becoming a living wage employer for information, and that Council directs staff to either A, develop a living wage employer implementation plan to be submitted to the Ontario Niagara Living Wage Network, or B, developing a living wage policy to be reviewed by Council in August. So to you for discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion, questions on this agenda item? Oh, Councillor Niznik.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just, I guess a question or a concern I would have about choosing A, develop a living wage employer implementation plan to be submitted to the Ontario Niagara Living Wage Network. I'm worried that that would restrict some of our contractors if they do not pay the living wage, and that might, I just wonder if that would get us into a bit of a problem in terms of having, you know, when you go out to tender, whether that would cause a big issue, because then that would limit the number of folks who could respond to us. Certainly, I'm in favor of a living wage for staff that town employs. I think that is important that we're there. I think we're almost there anyways, and just moving forward, I'm certainly in favor of that, but that would be the only problem I would have with A, so therefore I would prefer to do the develop a living wage policy to be reviewed by council in August.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps I can turn to our CAO for comments on that particular part of it.
Certainly you can, but Ms. Langor did a lot of work on this file, and I'll add my commentary if there's anything.
Shall we go to her?
But if we can start with her, please.
Okay, so we'll go to our Human Resources leader, Brianda.
Sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that is something that there may be some issues moving forward with a certain number of contracts there. At this time, though, we really don't know what they pay their staff, so it may not be an issue. We just, at this point, we're unsure, but we do foresee there being some issues with grass cutting, snow removal, and certain in our cleaning contracts.
To you, Councillor?
Yes, so thank you. So I think because we're just moving into this area, it might behoove us to go at the more cautious level.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments? And I see Councillor Wink.
Yes, so I will support Councillor Niznik's comments. I don't want to exclude small business owners from contracts within the town. I support a living wage policy to be reviewed by council in August, and a living wage clause for contracts exceeding $500,000 would be appropriate. If we were to just go the living wage employer implementation plan, I believe we're creating an awful lot of work for staff to delve into the contracts of all proposed contractors in the area. So I will support, as said, Councillor Niznik's comments.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think moving into it in a gradual way is a sensible approach to it. And it sounds as if it's a little more work than I anticipated when I suggested this. But I still think it's important for the town, and that we follow a process to arrive at a livable wage for every one of our employees. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Olson. Councillor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I agree with the other councillors' comments. I believe we have to walk before we run. I'd like to see a one-year trial period once we get into this to evaluate the progress and have a fulsome discussion at council regarding all aspects of the program that's developed. And therefore, I will be supporting item B like the rest of my councillors. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, any other comments from any other councillors? No? Okay, turn to the clerk on that then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as I've heard, the resolution is, as previously I read, adopting B, develop a living wage policy to be reviewed by council in August. So if that's...
So any other comments or questions on what we have decided? Not seen any, Mr. Clerk?
Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I wasn't quick enough when you looked this way.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Nesbitt.
It's hard, I know. So just wondering, I think I have a little bit of a concern of waiting till August with the employees that we currently have who are not earning a living wage. Is there any way we could maybe revisit the wording and come back so that there's only a few employees that are not meeting the living wage right now, that we could work on providing them with the living wage sooner rather than later? Maybe that's through you, Mr. Mayor, directed to the CAO.
I will turn to our CAO.
So in short, yes, that's certainly possible. I think probably the best way to split the difference, if I'm understanding your commentary, is to direct us to come back to you in August with a policy document, and we can identify in the month of August what the cost of implementation would be for the balance of the year. It'll be dramatically less than $20,000. That's $19,851. So if we called that $20,000 for easy math, implementation in September would be 5 out of 12, so less than 50% of that. So 7,000-8,000 maybe, 9 at the upside, I would think. So we, if it's council's will, we'll come back to you with potential policy in August, and with an option of immediate implementation and the cost implications of such, or deferral to the 2024 budget, and you can make the decision at that point in time, so that you could do presumably, if it was the will of a majority of council, we could do an immediate implementation, and if not, build it into the 2024 budget, as the case may be.
Okay, thank you for that. Most council, you've heard the CAO. Is that suit councilors? And I go by nods. Okay, yes. Mr. Clerk?
Starting the vote with Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart,
Yes?
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Thank you. Next item is 10.1.2. I have a motion moved by Councillor Niznik and seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved, the council approve report 2023-0121, proposed changes to the Planning Act and the provincial planning statement, and that this report be forwarded to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing as Pelham's comments on the proposed changes to the Planning Act through Bill 97, regulation regarding site plan requirements for residential development of 10 units or fewer, and the draft new provincial planning statements for you for discussion.
Thank you. Before I open it to council, I will turn to our Director of Planning, and after reading this for the second time, I saw it at the region. I can only imagine, wow, was your initial reaction. Some of the proposals, which of course have a good stand a very good chance of becoming law, because it is what's the word? Yes. Yes. So anyway, what are your comments? And of course, you've made them throughout the report. But yeah, it's just a lot of changes. I would like to hear your comments in a brief way.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Certainly, it is, again, another broad, sweeping change to how planning, is proposed to be done in the province. And if this changes to the legislation changes to the provincial, what they're referring now as the planning statement versus the policy statement, come into effect, it's going to be very, very significant. All across the province, not just here in Niagara and not just here in Pelham. But broadly speaking, the proposed changes in the planning statement and the repealing of the growth plan is regressive, quite frankly. And I believe I use those words in the report. We are going back 20, 30 years in terms of planning policies. The one thing that is missing out of that planning statement and is still yet to be released are the proposed changes with respect to natural heritage systems. So we have no idea what's being proposed there. But as we grapple with things like climate change and mitigation and adaptation, we know that those features are more and more important. And my fear is that, again, this government doesn't see that and will probably be looking at allowing development in those natural heritage features going forward. That yet remains to be seen, so we'll see. But certainly the changes with regards to repealing the growth plan and eliminating, density targets, intensification targets, those are things that we've been working on for almost 20 years, and you can see the impact that has on building a community that is transit supportive, but also a complete community, providing for a range and mix of housing to meet and accommodate people at all stages of life, not just, one stage of life. And this is, I'm afraid that what will come of this is that the developers will only do what they know what to do, and it's going to be the same old, and we're not going to have the ability to hit our complete community targets and those kind of things that are really important for us as a municipality, but us as a small municipality. So I think that the proposed changes are going to be pretty significant. One of the other aspects in the planning statement is, to a certain degree, he's looking at allowing for development in prime agricultural areas. And while that doesn't impact the areas that are considered to be specialty crops, so not within the areas that are currently in the Greenbelt plan, but there is a lot of land in Niagara that is prime agricultural land, and to allow for additional rural development in those areas is going to have a lasting impact on agriculture, our agricultural economy. Our agricultural economy here in Niagara, here in Pelham, that is our main economic driver for our community, and it's going to be significant. So the government will do what the government will do, but I think we do need to send some comments and lend our voice to to this, and so that they have a better understanding of what the potential impacts are. I think it's also going to be fairly lasting. So yeah, there's lots in there. There's lots of changes. It was very difficult to keep it at a high level because there's a lot in the details in the policy statement and through the repealing of the growth plan that is really going away, and what is being lost. So, but I'm happy to take questions if council has specific questions on the policy direction.
Thank you. It just, as you touched on this, it seems to be relaxing the intensification, which of course will mean that we'll fill up the urban boundary that much faster, which means then you have to expand the urban boundary. And as you said, there goes some more farmland without tightening up the situation within the boundary itself. So, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you're quite correct. I mean, regardless, it will lead to more sprawl. It will allow for the development community to expand urban boundaries at a greater rate, at a faster rate than what is currently allowed, and that too will have lasting impacts on our agricultural land supply. Certainly, this part of Niagara is known as we are not only the tender fruit, but we do have a lot of livestock operators here that thrive, and we do feed our province very well here in Niagara, and the loss of agricultural land is going to be significant. We've already seen it. I mean, it is happening. Land is, we're losing land, agricultural land here in Pelham. And the number of farmers are decreasing in Pelham as they are across the region, and so it's a critical issue that we're going to be faced with, and this is going to exacerbate it. I think we've heard a lot from the province about we have to build more homes, we have to build them faster. Quite frankly, this does not achieve that, and it won't deal with the most critical aspect of the housing crisis, which is affordable housing. The reference to affordable housing is completely removed out of this planning statement. And so, we will get more market housing, but we won't get affordable housing through this. And I don't think that will address the critical issues that we're facing in terms of the housing crisis.
Okay, thank you for those comments. I will open up to council, and I see Councillor Kerr.
Yes, I appreciate reading this and going through it. I think sometimes what's missed when we talk about urban expansion and other things and increases is what I call the downstream effect. And what I'm talking about is the implications of urban development, not just on agricultural lands, but conservation lands and other things, be it with and kind of hot topics of excess flow or whatever from stormwater ponds, et cetera, pushing into areas. Sometimes we deal with the immediate and looking at a very small area when in fact the impact has a much larger geographic impact, and not necessarily on agriculture, but on a whole series of other items, watersheds and other things. So I agree with you. Some things are there and some things are kind of almost consciously omitted for consideration, and I find that a little bit distressing at the provincial level, and looking at what's also happened in terms of restructuring, in terms of conservation authorities and other things, in terms of how they interact. Yeah, it's a definite concern.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Councillor Kerr. Any other comments? Councillor Nesnick.
Yes, so thank you. I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, just very well written, Ms. Weens. Congratulations. It was succinct, easy to read, understandable, and makes so much sense. So let's hope the provincial government listens. My one question to you is, did you collaborate with other regional municipalities in creating this? And are they also sending their concerns forward, if you know the answer to that?
Ms. Weens?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. We certainly did. The area planning directors had a meeting. We've met a few times on this. As the province is known for, they released these changes, the Thursday before the Easter long weekend. There's no public consultation. There's no kind of community meetings or anything like that. So we have met. Everyone across the region is, pretty astounded by the scope of these changes and the direction that the province has taken. And yes, many of the municipalities are also writing reports this week, next week, and to their councils, and similarly putting those comments forward to hopefully to the minister. So yes.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yes, so thank you very much for all your diligence, and let's hope they listen.
Thank you.
Councillor Eckert?
Thank you, Ms. Weens, for that excellent report. Recently, we saw I read in Mississauga that a minister's zoning order tripled the size of a development that council had I think approved, and there was an appeal to the minister, and he tripled it. So those minister zoning orders are taking place already. And the comment was that, yes, we've tripled it, but it still goes back to the municipality to plan the type of housing and stuff like that. When those type of minister's orders come down, really how much ability or what effect do we have in planning those developments then?
Ms. Weens?
So, Mr. Mayor, through you, so minister zoning orders, again, there's been a lot of those that have been issued across the province, most significantly in the GTA, but there have been some here in Niagara as well, in the larger municipalities. But essentially, through these changes in the Planning Act, the minister's zoning orders, when they get released, they don't have to comply with the provincial policy statement. The minister's zoning orders can, do things that don't necessarily comply. Historically, the province has looked to having support from a municipal council when it issues a municipal zoning order, but if these changes go forward, that is no longer would no longer be necessary. But if a minister's zoning order is issued and is put in place, and yes, they say it's up to the municipality to plan for it, so then the municipality then has to plan, how do we service that? What's the size of the infrastructure that's needed to accommodate that growth area or that development? What is the impact on, on the community? But the local municipalities will deal with those issues, but the actual fact that the development has been approved is a fait accompli. It's just about how you implement it.
Thank you. Councillor?
And would it be accurate to say that minister's orders are initiated generally because a developer is not happy with the town's decisions, and so there is direct appeal to the minister to order this sort of thing? Is that accurate?
Ms. Weems?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, I would say that's generally accurate. It's the developer, the development community that lobbies, the province for a minister's zoning order. They have a plan for some property that they want to implement it, and, they might be getting either pushback from the community on it, for any variety of reasons. But, it is based on the lobbying efforts of the development industry, and they go directly to the province to ask for minister zoning orders. The province, again, has historically wanted, a municipal council's position that they would be supportive of that order, but, they don't always seek that, and they don't always agree. If the municipality says no, the minister may still issue that order.
Thank you. Councillor?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. At one time, and I think this is probably 50 or 60 years ago, the answer for low income or for reducing housing costs was to spread out as much as we possibly could, and that was the answer. It was also the answer was some of that led to most of the best farmland in Ontario is under the 401 and under the QEW. So then the answer was annexation. Is that part of this topics or anything like that? Is that a potential?
To Ms. Weems?
Mr. Mayor, through you, with regards to annexation, that's not part of the this change that's has been released, but we do know that the province has, of course, indicated that they want to review the whole regional government and the structure of regional government here in Niagara. And so through that process, we don't know yet what that outcome will be, but that could be annexation could be an outcome. We don't know at this stage.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, one of the things I noticed here is that the policies required for climate change, is that an opportunity for the municipality to establish changes to building codes and that type of things?
Ms. Weems?
Mr. Mayor, through you, so there are some policies with respect to climate change and climate change adaptation. They haven't really been changed too much from what currently exists. I do know that the province is looking at making some changes to the Ontario Building Code. The timing on when that might roll out is unknown at this stage, but that is also something that they're looking at. But the one thing that is missing with respect to, the climate change and those kind of things are, again, the natural heritage policies and the natural heritage system approach for that. That piece hasn't been released, so we don't know yet how those policies will fit in with the climate change policies.
Thank you. Councillor?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And the last time we spoke in council about planning, I think you indicated, and I might be right or I could be wrong about this, but you said there's roughly an 8-year supply of approved projects on the books right now. Does this have any impact on the strategic? I think it's strategically, if we got 8 years of supply right now, what's the rush here?
Ms. Weems?
So yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, that was at the last council meeting. You received a report from the regional planning commissioners in Ontario, and they had identified, the number of lots that are registered or in draft approved across the province, and kind of the supply of developable land already. And then you had asked a question about what was Pelham's developable land and what was our supply. And I did respond to that, and you're quite correct. That was what it is. And so this has been the commentary that we've been pushing back to the province in terms of, the proposed changes. Like they seem to feel that the holdup in getting land to market for housing is in the planning process. And quite frankly, that's not the case. We do have a supply of land, and we are meeting those targets that we're supposed to be meeting in terms of that land supply. And yet they seem to want to open up more land for housing and building housing faster. And so we're all sitting here, very perplexed because the land is there. There's land and there's lots of developments that are registered or draft approved, but there are other reasons why developers are not bringing those lands to the market, and they're controlling the market because they want to keep the land prices high because it's in their best interest. So they release the supply when it's in their best interest to do so. And we, as a municipality, as local government across the province, we can't compel a developer to bring his land to market. We don't have that authority or that ability to compel them to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Weens. Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And finally, I see that there's additional residences being permitted on agricultural or farm properties, if that's the title. Now,
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you. So in addition to being able to have, a second dwelling on a farm property, the farmer, if your lot existed as of January 1st, 2013, and you were in agricultural use, you would be able to sever up to 3 residential lots from your property. So again, that is something that we feel is going to have a very significant impact on our agricultural economy and the price of agricultural land, and affect and impact over the long term the ability of farmers to farm their property.
Thank you, Ms. Weens. Councillor?
There is the potential for that, yes.
Okay, Councillor? Okay, thank you. Any other comments from any councillors? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
So starting with the vote, Councillor Eckhart,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr,
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion's carried. So maybe a break?
And perhaps at this time in the meeting, we will take a 10-minute recess and return after that in 10 minutes. Thank you.
want me to leave?
Council, we'll try to get going.
I will do that, sir.
We got to get him to work. John has to get to work.
This is so. Yeah, the benefit of us going.
I'll be back here for 10 minutes before Olson gets here.
Every story I've ever heard. Yes, every story.
Okay, Mr. Clerk, everyone's back. Please pick up where we left off.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're now on item 10.1.3. I have a motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Eckhart. Be it resolved that Council received the memo 2023-0120 Corporate Services entitled Tax Rate Bylaw 2023 for information, and that Council consider approving bylaw 34-2023 being a tax levy bylaw for 2023.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion or comments on this agenda item, Council? Not, excuse me, not seeing any, Mr. Clerk?
Starting with the vote, Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kerr?
Yes.
Councillor Niznik?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
So that motion's carried. Thank you. Moving now to 13, presentation and consideration of bylaws. I have a motion moved by Councillor Wink and seconded by Councillor Niznik. Be it resolved that the Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same, and that the Mayor and Clerk be and hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaw. 1, Bylaw 33, 2023, being a bylaw to appoint Julia Taylor, Officer Number 872, as Bylaw Enforcement Officer, Property Standards Officer, and Provincial Offences Officer for the Corporation of the Town of Pelham. 2, Bylaw 34, 2023, being a bylaw to set rates of taxation for the year 2023. 3, a Bylaw 35, 2023, being a bylaw to authorize the execution of public event agreements with 4 licensed establishments in the Town of Pelham, and do repeal bylaw 4218-2020. For discussion,
My mic? Yes. Thank you, Councillor. Any questions or discussion on this item from members of council? Okay, to the clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So commencing the vote with Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Now moving to item 14.1, we have a notice of motion moved by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Eckhart, and I'll turn it over to Councillor Olson.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion is, whereas the strategic use of town lands and recreation and culture master plan have both established an actionable components of Pelham's strategic plan, and whereas Old Pelham Town Hall, located at the corner of Memorial Drive and Canberra Road, is an important but potentially underutilized community asset and recreational space owned and operated by the Town of Pelham, and whereas Council for the Town of Pelham desires to maximize the utilization of town facilities for the purpose of culture, activity, and social connection, now therefore be it resolved that Council directs staff to prepare a report on the current use of Old Pelham Town Hall and investigate the feasibility of repurposing Old Pelham Town Hall as a cultural center for purposes such as, but not limited to, art gallery, archive, museum, and theater space, and that council direct staff to explore potential grant funding opportunities to support possible repurposing, include such opportunities within the report, and that council direct staff to report back to council by Q3, third quarter of 2023, and that staff be directed to include in the 2024 budget funding and to engage a consultant to perform a building condition assessment, providing estimates on the required capital upgrades to achieve accessibility and zero environmental impact for council consideration.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any further comments on that motion, Councillor Olson?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just very short comments. The Old Town Hall is a building of considerable age, and they take up quite a bit of expenses. I don't foresee in the future that anything's going to happen to the town hall. I think we'll have to maintain it because it is a cultural center. It has a cenotaph, and it's quite a beautiful location and structure. I'm convinced that there are grants, and I would ask, Ms. Quinlan, perhaps if she could comment on the availability of grants and the need to be ready for them. So that's the purpose of this report, because I'm convinced there's going to be cash or money becoming available for this type of thing. So if I could ask Ms. Quinlan Murphy.
Okay. Before we go to Councillor Eckert, then we will indeed go to Ms. Quinlan for comments.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we are always actively looking for grants. There are cultural grants. I think right now there is one that could potentially, that is a good fit for the Old Pelham Town Hall. So this is very important for us to have council's approval that this building is designated as a cultural building. Then we can have that support as we submit our grant application for Old Pelham Town Hall.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Quinlan. We'll now go to the seconders' comments. Councillor Eckert.
Yes, I echo Councillor Olson's comments. I think it's a great old building. It has some significance in the community. I think it's used on a regular basis. I certainly would support looking into what it would cost to upgrade it, bring it up to standards, or to be able to use it in the future. And I certainly would be looking at supporting the idea of grants to do that. And once we have those estimates in, then council could make an informed decision on what to do with that building. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'll now open it up to other members of council. Councillor Kerr.
I'm just, it's more of a clarification for me. Considering the current uses of the building and people that use it, et cetera, would a designation as a cultural center then prohibit some of the uses that are currently ongoing? I'm just looking for, if someone was using it and suddenly now it has its particular designation, does that preclude them from utilizing it?
To the Director of Wellness, Vicki Van Ravensway.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. That would all be determined at a future date. We can look at, what the possibilities are in turning it into a culture center. And, obviously the hall is being used now for, celebrations of life or showers or, the Kinsman Club also, that's their home at the moment and they meet on a weekly basis. So, there's lots of thought would have to be going into this, and of course the needs for a cultural facility. But there are areas within the building that are not being used, and there's opportunities, and we would have to investigate and come back to council with recommendations.
Counselor?
Thank you. Yeah, I was just worried that sometimes when we designate something in a particular fashion that we inadvertently step on our own toes and preclude something that has been utilizing it significantly in the past. That was really the point. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Olson, for raising this motion. I think it's important for council to understand the progress that staff and previous council motions have undertaken in the Old Town Hall over the last 10 years. When I look at this motion, I want to specifically address a concern, a constraint that I believe we need to address before we approve this motion. Here's a brief history of the renovation programs undertaken at the Old Town Hall by staff and through council direction. In 2014, there was a full restoration, including washrooms, kitchen, floor, for a total project cost of $333,770. In 2015, we provided the installation of the acoustic tiles, the project cost which I could not find. 2016, we did the landscaping to support the mortar and cenotaph and improve the outdoor reflection space for $15,000. In 2020 to 21, we did a facilities condition assessment, which was completed and found that the building components and structure were in good condition. They provided a 10-year capitalization plan that identified projects to keep the building in its current conditions. These projects do not include works to improve the building or its function, but it did have a lot of items on it. And this list of projects at the Old Town Hall that was prepared for council was the exit and smoke alarms, brick repair, furnace replacement, asphalt parking, hot water tank, and electrical panel for about an approximate total cost of $150,000. And the years when all these projects were to be established were listed on that report for council. This project in the table were added to the 20-year capital facility budgets, which we all approved as council at the beginning of this year. We have put the staff pushed some of the forecasts out to make sure that the budgets were palatable with our financial plan going forward. The challenge we have, as I see it, is the septic system still needs to be addressed in some fashion, as that's the Achilles heel of this building in my review. I've been involved with 2 septic tank systems in the town of Pelham over the last few years before this term of council. One was a building addition where they added a bedroom to their facility, and the other one was a new build. As you probably know, Mr. Mayor, the region is in charge of septic systems.
Yes, indeed.
And that is a challenging situation. And let me tell you how challenging it is. You would think this would be easy identifying a septic system. The region person responsible for septic system in this new building, the guy had the approval from the region. That approval person left the region. They had another person come in. He had to move the tank. His line no longer came straight out of the building. It had 2 45-degree bends in it. That regional guy, then he left. Then you got another guy come in, and then there was issues with the bed. That was 3 different people with 3 different, this poor person, an individual building this house in the urban area, not in the urban area, in the country, was beside himself, but trying to get the house built. They don't want to get into a fight. I wasn't involved in the fight, but I was involved as just someone to talk to, and what do I do next? So their Achilles heel on this whole building, the Old Town Hall, in my view, is a septic system. So if we proceed at this point to make it a more functional, get more people in there, I think we're going to have sewer problems. And that needs to be addressed, in my view, before we proceed to approve this motion. So I will not be approving this motion at this present time. Thank you.
Thank you. I would, correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll pass this to the CAO, but I would think that I would hopefully be part of the staff report, Mr. CAO, when we're talking about the condition of the building and what it would take to bring it up to everyday usage, sir?
Yes.
No. Why? Oh, thank you. Are we going to have more of these kind of answers?
Last week, I got so much praise from the fire chief for one-word answers that I thought I'd try it again. They're his favorite type.
Thank you, and thank you, Fire Chief. Okay, seriously, we understand your concerns, but it would appear that your concerns are going to be addressed in the report if we indeed vote for it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we've talked about the septic system
yeah.
and the sewer at the old town hall before.
Yes.
And I think it needs to be addressed, in my view,
Okay.
as an item before we even get to approving this motion. And therefore, I will not be approving it till that is addressed properly.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other comments on this motion? Oh, to the treasurer, Ms. Quinlan Murphy.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, with regards to the septic system, that's going to be one of the costs that we are including as part of the grant. So we're looking for a grant to fund that. So we're aware of the issue, and that's what we're putting as part of the renovations to the building.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, and a septic system will qualify for a grant?
Well, we're looking into that. It's part of to renovate the building to make it accessible, useful for the purpose of the building, yes.
Thank you.
We're looking into it. I mean.
Right. The other comment I had in conjunction with Councillor Kerr's comment was the fact that I was concerned about calling it a cultural center, that we won't run into a conflict. And if this is all part of the report that we're going to get from staff that ensures that we don't run into issues, then I'm comfortable with it. But I don't want to have qualified a building as a certain designation and then have issues. And obviously, the septic system has to be part of the thing that's approved before we can have anything work there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. I'm quite sure that the septic system is indeed going to be on staff radar with the other parts of the building. So I think you can rest assured that that will be included in the report, sir. Any other comments? Not seeing any. Mr. Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Starting with the vote with Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Just let me catch up here. Yeah. So that moves us to item number 15 on the agenda. I have a motion moved by Councillor Eckhart and Councillor Hildebrand. Now, we have added to this, so I'm going to read it out to make sure that our movers and seconders are still supportive of the addition to go in closed session. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider a matter under Section 239(2) of the Municipal Act as follows. 1, proposed or pending acquisition of land by the municipality and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. One item, properties located in Ward 2. And a second item that's been referred to the in-camera agenda, originally under the consent agenda 8.1.1, the security of property of the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose in relation to drainage liability concerns. So provided that Councillor Eckhart and Councillor Hildebrand are comfortable with that, we could leave them as the mover and seconder.
Councillor Eckhart?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay, and Councillor Hildebrand? Okay, thank you.
So then for discussion,
No,
Mr. Mayor?
any further discussion going in camera? I see none.
So commencing with the vote, Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Eckhart.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kerr.
Yes.
Councillor Niznik.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
So that motion is carried. If you can just give us a couple minutes, we'll have to clear the gallery and
Yep,
then
and
stop
we
the
have
live
to-
streaming.
Yes, yes. We thank you for coming to the meeting.